Heading into week 10 of the college football season, a lot of talks about Auburn's future that includes stadium expansion amongst other topics. And to discuss that, James Crepea on the Plains right now. And James, right now Auburn decided to shelve stadium expansion plans. Why did they decide to do that, and when do you think this perhaps could be back in the plan book?
Well, there's a variety of reasons, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's about money. It's a big expansion project, again, proposed to be over 140, probably over 150 million by the time it would all be said and done, as far as what was initially proposed, what those initial plans on the table appeared to be. When you're trying to get together that much money, and that's a lot. Look, if the money was there from the get-go, this project would be well underway. It is not presently, so that's why it's being tabled. But that doesn't mean it won't ever be, or that this wasn't somewhat expected as far as just most recently. At this point, I would say, look, Auburn didn't have a massive facilities amount of money spent, just like they spent on the scoreboard behind me here the prior year. They didn't have that kind of massive obligation by way of a $14 or $15 million facilities upgrade this past year. The grand thing is, I think that some form of this project will continue. Whether it's exactly what you saw initially, that may take longer. It may be a little bit more scaled down. But I'd say that certainly at the end of the 2017, at the end of this season, to affect the 2017 season, doesn't appear to be on the table.
All right, James, now we look ahead to 2018. Auburn scheduling a season opener with Washington. Is this a good deal, and really, how did all this come together?
Well, for one, it had been a very long and arduous process for Auburn to try and land a Power 5 opponent, not for lack of effort. They were in talks with a lot of different teams over really nearly 2 years. Going back to March of 2014, I remember writing about this, or 2015, excuse me, writing about talking with Florida State about opening up the 2018 or 2019 seasons. Obviously, those negotiations fell through. Then you moved on to other games, other opportunities. You saw neutral site games explode. Obviously, Auburn scheduled the game with Oregon in 2019 in Dallas. So that was already on the table. That was something that was going on. For this 18 opener, it took a while, but they finally settled. And you kind of heard for a while now that a neutral site, probably Atlanta, was the most likely situation. That certainly appeared to be the case most recently. It just by where the other neutral site games were filling in, it made the most sense. As long as the Chick-fil-A kickoff was there, you knew that Auburn was going to be a very heavy favorite to end up there in 2018. The fact that it's Washington, a little bit surprising. Obviously, they have no history. It's the first time that a Pac-12 team is playing in the Chick-fil-A kickoff game, so it was kind of hard to predict that. Washington had a game previously scheduled that they moved back a week, so it was very hard to just from the sideline say, oh, well, was Washington an obvious opponent? No, it wasn't. But I think it is obviously a pretty quality opponent. Based on what they have right now, obviously what Chris Peterson has going on with the Huskies right now, they're an undefeated team. But you're talking about projecting over a year away. Very hard to know what they could be by then, or what Auburn could be by then. But on paper, making a $4.2 million payout, that's the biggest for a neutral site game for Auburn's history. That's big. Being close to Atlanta is obviously always good for Auburn. And for Washington to come in and get some exposure on the East Coast, again, against an SEC team, certainly they get quite a good amount out of it. So it's definitely a win-win for all teams, and most of these neutral site games are. But Auburn was looking for that one-off in 2018, and now they'll turn their attention to 2020 for the next Power 5 opponent.